So, welcome everyone, and sorry for the confusion. So, because I imagine that I would be speaking to people directly and asking them questions, and we'll just engage in how do we empower ourselves and set goals and actualize the things that we want to see in our lives. But I'll just do a presentation and talk about myself, and then if you have questions after, we can talk about that. But I love this quote here by Ilyana Van Zant. Life will work for me when I realize within me is the essence of everything I am. I mean, all of the answers are within us. And I know that it's really easy for us to compare ourselves to other people. But I think one of the most important things when we're thinking about goal setting and what we want for ourselves is to understand that the only person that we ever compete with is our past self. We always want to be better than what we were before. And how could we continue to improve? No one else. So I always wanted my career to be centered around the things that I love to do. These things are storytelling, teaching, music, being creative, computers, and technology. I'm not a musician in any way, shape, or form, but I love to listen to music. And I grew up around all of these things. I knew that I wanted to be an educator at a very young age, not really knowing that. I'll say this, I'll take that back. I knew that I was interested in teaching at a very young age because I would get in trouble all the time for marking up my mom's walls, or in my mind it was my imaginary blackboard. I kept a roll book, like I had an imaginary class. And I never really knew, even when I went to college, I never said, oh, I'm going to be an educator. But it was just something I loved to do, right? Even storytelling and taking photographs. When I was younger, my dad bought me a small point and shoot camera, and I found myself being the one who was always taking photos of my friends. Again, nothing that I ever thought would be my career, but it's something I love to do, and I just would do it. So it's so interesting, like when you start to tap into yourself and say, what is it that I love to do? I think that this all made sense to me my first year in college, because I actually went to college for computer science and never took a computer science course at all in college. The minute I looked at the directory and I started seeing all of the options, and I'm like, storytelling, movies, this is what I want to do. I just gravitated towards this image making, anything that involved image making and telling stories. And that is where, from that point on, I knew that some way, shape, or form, whether I was going to be working in television and film, or if I was going to be making documentaries, I never thought of myself as a director, like I'll write a screen film. Actually, that's not true. I did think I wanted to write films, but I just didn't have the film in my mind, right? And but I knew documentaries. I could go research. I loved history. I could go research, and I could make a documentary out of something. This is me at like 17, 18, 19 in college. But I'm saying all of this to say how I am here today, doing all of the things that were interesting to me and never felt like work, that they would be work from since I was in my teens. So I do say this, if you are, whatever it is that you want to do, to learn as much as possible about it, right? How who's doing whatever it is that you're doing. If you're someone who's just starting out, I recommend getting internships and just working alongside people who are in the same field that you're in to learn as much as possible, because we all know that you could learn more by doing and from other people who are doing what you're doing, probably more so than you can in school. So for me, when I was in college, I set up my own internships. My school didn't have a formal internship program, but that didn't stop me from getting internships. I was one of those people, and just to date myself, when I was in college, there was no internet. So well, at least it wasn't accessible to us. So I was literally looking up companies, calling 411 to try to get their number and their addresses, and mailing letters, or visiting places and dropping off letters to people to say, I want to intern for you. I would do, for me, the idea for free to just work in a company and learn as much as possible from people who are doing it was just, wow, I could do that and get college credits. Are you kidding me? I don't even need the credits. I need the experience. So that's one of the things that I did that was like self-starting and goes under this idea of learning as much as possible. I wanted to know, what was it like to be in the entertainment world? What does it mean to work in a television station or in a radio station? And I got my first internship at a radio station, WBLS, which was one of the biggest you know, black radio stations in New York City. It was the biggest, right? And so, how I got it, again, calling people, sending resumes, making, I had like my own office in school, just printing out tons of resumes and sending them. And I got an answer back, did an interview, and got it. And that just opened up a whole bunch of doors. Like I saw television production through the Apollo Theater. And, I also, something else that I would recommend is workshops. Like now that we have access to the internet and you don't have to go do these archaic things like call people on the phone, there's so many, especially now during COVID, there's so many workshops that you could do online and research, just to get closer to that thing that it is that you want to do. And I could go on and on, but I know we're limited on time. So to get into it, one of the biggest things is invest in yourself, invest in your ideas, and invest in your talents. And for me, this is the story of my life. I'm a creative, so therefore I had to make a decision in my life very early. Am I actually, I'll say kind of midway or something, but if I really think about where I am now and before, I have made a decision that I'm not going to constantly ask someone to approve me. I'm going to approve myself, and then people will come to me for my services. And I made that decision as a creative when I was doing photography. I started doing photography in the early 90s, 1992. 93 really is when I picked up a camera and was like, I'm going to be a photographer. I didn't know anything about photography, but I proclaimed myself to be a photographer because I fell in love with it. I realized that this is something I could do. I had already been working in a record company, and someone came in with all of these photos that they took of these artists. And I'm like, you get paid to do this? I would love to do this. This is what I've been doing from since I was a teenager, going to concerts and running to the front of the stage and taking photographs and bragging to my friends about my close ups of Bobby Brown, and I'm like, I could get paid for that. So when I realized that, I said, well, what is this whole photography thing? I never even imagined photography as a career. But once I saw this thing that was happening in our publicity department, that we were paying, paying for photographs. And then I started digging a little deeper and went to the library because I love libraries, and started looking at a whole bunch of photography books. And this really made me fall in love with it because I saw that the photography books were almost like documentary films, but it was a still thing that you could kind of open and go through and go back and keep. And it was just really special to me. And I said, you know what? I'm going to document hip hop culture in New York City. That's going to be my thing. I saw how photographers like Roy DeCarava and so many, Chester Higgins, and all these different photographers that were, Anthony Barboza really is one who stood out to me, how he was photographing jazz musicians. And I said, well, hip hop is like jazz, years later. To me, there was something that connected to the community, and it had something to say. And I knew that it was something that it would be relevant 20 years down the line or 30 years down the line. And here we are with hip hop turning 50 in 2 years. And of course, these are now historical moments. So as I was taking photos, I knew that I was documenting something that would be completely different 20 and 30 years down the line. And so how I got this to do this was at the record company. There was someone interviewing Rakim, who was one of our artists from the Source magazine. And the Source magazine was very new at the time. And it was a magazine that I'm like, hey, if I make photographs, I could publish them in a magazine. I'm doing something. So I asked the editor who came in to interview him, I was like, I'm a photographer. You have to claim it even when you're not even sure about it. And I would love to photograph for your magazine. Who do I talk to? And he introduced me to the photo editor, Chimo Du. At that time, I had been teaching myself photography and taking photos of people in the neighborhood. I just fell in love with this thing. So I came to him with my portfolio and he said, you know what, you have an eye. And I didn't really know what that meant. I'm like, because when you're starting something new, you're not even sure if you're doing it right. Right. But to me, it just felt special. And it was something that I just enjoyed doing. And I would just go out every day, take notes, ask questions, be around other photographers because I had access to some from the record company and just ask them. I just asked everyone. One of my friends introduced me to the darkroom. So I started printing in the darkroom and learning that. And then he put me on my first assignment and he loved the photos. And that's how it started. So here you see this photo of Nas and Biggie, which was like about 3 years after I got started. And I was interested again in like documenting these people and really just telling the stories. You listen to Biggie's music and you hear all of this rah, 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 rah. But what about the peaceful, quiet moments? He was like a big teddy bear. Every time I saw him, he was like the most gentle soul. And I wanted to capture that moment. And who knew that, he wouldn't be with us that much longer. But interestingly enough, after doing from the 90s all the way up to 2000s, I was just, constantly documenting the culture. And then I wanted to point my camera to the continent because I was hearing about Ghana and that there was a hip hop scene in Ghana. And I was like, you know what? That's amazing. Imagine things come full circle because we know that hip hop has its roots in African culture, right? And I'm thinking, what is happening there? Like, this is a cipher. This is like communication across the waters, right? Is there any influence from what's going on here? If so, I just want to see. I was curious. And so I figured out a way to get to Ghana because I was teaching at the time. So research. I said, how am I going to get to Ghana and pay? It's not it's very expensive to just travel to Ghana, right, from New York City. But what I did is I wrote a proposal since I was teaching that I would use this information in my curriculum, and which I did, and that I would, talk about this idea between Africa and the diaspora, thinking about that connection, use these photos as a way to amplify that connection, but also go to the Cape Coast and document the castles there, to talk about the history of slavery as we read text in New York City. So this was me now thinking about how to educate the young people that I was teaching, how to give them a different perspective on about a place in Africa, because we all know, if you know about anything on this side, is that could be, you could learn the most horrible things about what's happening on the continent. So I found like I could win 3 times with this. One, I'm teaching children. Two, I'm working on my personal project. And three, I'm developing curriculum that's going to be long term. Four, I'm really doing something like I'm really looking at these connections. Is there a spiritual connection that's going on between the diaspora and Africa through music, through sound? And so years later, because I went to Ghana in 2008, and then from there I ended up in Nigeria in 2010, and then I couldn't stop going back to Nigeria. I would go there like 2 and 3 times a year for like 10 years, and I'm missing it now because of this ridiculous pandemic. But what I did is like 2 years ago, I put all of the photos that I've been taking and juxtaposed them, and and seeing how they're vibing with each other. So you have Ti on the left. You have in the middle. This is a I was at Tiffany and from Ghana at a video shoot and had all of these people dancing and took those photos. So you see all of this. We have Nigeria here. We have Philadelphia. Amanda Seals is here, and all of these people just kind of vibing together, right? And this is really research for a long-term book that I'm working on, that I've been working on for the past the past 20 years, right? And so, and really essentially is going to be my story. So here you have these women from Kenya to Brooklyn with Lauryn Hill to South Africa. you know, so it's just like really how are we communicating with each other in a different way, which I'm very interested in. And if you my personal my other work, which focuses more like it's more works that I exhibit, and it's more of a soul searching because I am not soul searching, but it's really more of a deeper connection between the continent and the diaspora, where I'm really looking at my heritage and my family from Sierra Leone and my grandmother's practice of making gara fabrics and how that is relative to identity. So that's a whole different thing that I could go on and on about. But I thought for this, I could just I'm seeing now how that project, my work that I'm doing right now, connects very much to this because I'm constantly interested in these interwoven conversations. But here are some of those photos. So I went everywhere from Sierra Leone to Kenya to South Africa, Ethiopia, Senegal, so many different places. It's also important to align yourself with like minded people. Along the way on my photographic journey, I met my best friend, my sister, Leila Matula Baren, who's also a photographer. Here is us before, and here we are now. This is last year in Bamako, and so we dream together. Have a partner that you dream with. Layla, sometimes we would just be on the phone dreaming together, and I kid you not, we dreamed up this whole project that I'm going to share with you. So this is us like working in our own way. I also did a project called Real Woman about women of different shapes, sizes, backgrounds. Layla did work on jazz friendships, and this is back in like the early 2000s that we were working on this stuff. But we thought, how about we come together and form a collective? So it started with she shooting, and we started, it was five of us who were all pictured here, and we started doing shows of our works, which was really cool. And then Layla and I, two years ago, no, 3 years ago, we came up with this idea. Actually, we came up with the idea in 2004, back dreaming, and we continued to dream. We traveled. Before we were saying we could do a book because we felt like there was a void. There was no voice for Black women photographers, right? And there was a book that was published in the 80s called Viewfinder, and we were like, well, where's the new book? We're seeing all of these books coming out. Where are we being represented? And we just felt like there was a big void and it was time to do something new. Take the initiative, even when you have no outlets. We had no outlets, no real connections in publishing or anything like that, but we're dreamers. So in 2004, we said, you know, we need to do this. And we came up with a dummy, like to take to a publisher. And we were told no. They were like, we don't think anybody's going to buy this book. And we were so annoyed. We had like a great scholar, Dr. Deborah Willis, who agreed to write the foreword. And in America, a lot of the times, there are gatekeepers who just don't want to take a chance, particularly on Black people. That's just what it is, plain and simple. But we have these brilliant ideas, and we're like, so what we did during that time is we kind of branched out. I'm here doing this photography project on music, traveling all over Africa. Layla's doing, she's also traveling between Africa and Europe and all these different places. And along the way, we kept meeting photographers. In Ghana, I met photographers. In Nigeria, I met photographers, women photographers who were doing amazing things. And then we regrouped in 2017. I said, Layla, you know, we have to do something for the community, something for the collective. Let's do this book. Let's really do it and focus on the, like, make it global. So we'll be looking at Africa and the diaspora and really see who these women are, and let's make a book out of it. And at first I was thinking about a journal, and then Layla was like, no, let's do a book. Let's get all the women and put them in a book. And here's how MFON came about. MFON, this is her photo here, and it's a self-portrait. And she was a photographer who a contemporary of mine, but unfortunately she passed away from breast cancer in 2000, right? 2001, right on the eve of her first museum exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum. We both were in that museum together. And so as she was battling with breast cancer, she was doing self-portraits, which were beautiful. And those images were what was up at the museum. So because we believe in legacy, we said, let us name this book. Actually, Layla came up with that idea to name the book after her. And everything that we do, we feel like as long as we're continuing to lift her name, she cannot be forgotten. And through this work, we're continuing her legacy. Here are some clear shots of the photos. These photos were called the Amazon's new clothes, and it was a way that she healed, the way that she healed during going through the most, challenging time of her life. But interestingly enough, here she says this, and thinking about just living to your fullest, right? Even when you know that death could be knocking at the door. I'm constantly shooting myself so I can continue to appreciate what I have and where I am. The result, I'm totally digging where I am and I feel sexy now. And I have never felt like that before. Fun. A beautiful, beautiful spirit. So here are some of the photos in the book. And the thing is that we said this time we're not going to any publishers. We're going to lay out this book. We're going to go raise the money ourselves. We did a GoFundMe campaign and we were able to research. We did good research. We found out who Aperture Photography, like who they print their books from. We got a publisher to print the books for us. Got a designer to help design the book. We got so many different women to include, as you can see, from different parts of the world. Like, I mean, we have people from all over the United States, from Europe, from Africa, from the Caribbean. The only place that we probably don't have anyone from is Asia, right? And I'm sure we're missing out. So when we do another one, we'll be continuing. And what we made it a point and duty to do is that even though we don't have of course we don't have every Black woman in this book who needs to be in it, but in the front section of the book there's over 200 names, maybe even 300 names of women who are not even in the book, and we just listed all the ones that we could find. And then after that we said and more. So this book is for them, and this book is for the archives. And so luckily, because we had faith in ourselves and we invested in ourselves, we invested time, energy, sleep, all types of things. We were able to get write-ups in all of these publications. It started with the New York Times, and from there it just spiraled off. And people were coming to us. They wanted to know about this publication and was just giving us all of this love for something that we took a chance on. We got to speak at all of these different places. We were invited pretty much around the world. We ended up going to the Tate, to a photo book festival, Fiebre photo book in Madrid. We spoke at Harvard. All of these different places, people were calling us, inviting us to really share this story. And really amazing too is that our book ended up in the archives of all of these places too, and more than these, because people kept asking, and now that the book is sold out, people are still requesting this book that publishers told us nobody would be interested in. So this is what I mean when I say you can't rely on people looking on the outside telling you what your worth is and what you're capable of doing and who's going to buy your work and who's not going to buy it. Because really, once you have a good, solid idea, you go to your peers. You go to the people, you kind of form that community around you of people who you trust, and you have faith and move forward and make sure you're putting your work in the world, because it definitely has to be there. So take the leap. Have faith that you will land on your 2 feet. Now, this is a testament to my life. I'll share one last little story with you about taking the leap. I remember, all of this was just, let's go back to 2014. 2014, I was teaching at in a public school it was my 10th year. It was my 10th year teaching. All along, I've been doing photography. All this time, I'm traveling back and forth in the summer, working on this long-term project. But I had the comfort of a full-time job teaching, right? And I enjoyed teaching. So, and what was beneficial about this is I was inspiring just by me being this artist in the world, I was inspiring my students, because they would be saying, Miss Fawundu. First, my conversations were, Miss Fawundu, you're going to Africa? You better be careful over there. Someone's going to kidnap you too. Miss Fawundu, you're going to Africa? Take me with you. Because they were like, who is this woman that keeps going? What is there that you keep seeing? And I would share my work with them, share videos, all of this stuff, and it would blow their minds. So that was a journey. But at some point, I knew that I thought about, where do I really want to be? I love teaching, but I hate the Department of Education because it's too biased and it's too crazy, and they're doing crazy things to these kids. And there's so much I could do. You know, when there's a roof, it's so much I could do in this space. And I know I needed to be somewhere else where I could still impact young people. But I'm a creative. Like, I came to I'm like, you're an artist. You have to be an artist. And I remember one time talking to my son. He was maybe like 10 at the time. And he goes, Mommy, just be a full time artist. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. That's exactly what I'm going to do. And then so really interesting is, I made a decision that I was going to leave my job, be a full time artist, and go back to school and get my MFA, so that this way I'll be able to teach in a university, because I like being in a university. I knew that balance between teaching in a university and being an artist. I'm always researching. It just made sense to me. I visualized, like, where do you want to be? And I thought, this is what I need to do, and I'm still dreaming. And so what I did is, like, 2015, first of all, I've been putting off my MFA application for years, for at least 5 years before that. So finally, I said, you know what? Apply. I applied to one university, and it was Columbia University, and I got in. And I was like, oh my God. So that was the first thing, right? Is get into this thing. Now you have to leave your job. So I made the decision that I was going to leave my job and go to school full time. Mind you, I'm raising three children. At the time, one was in college, the other one was a junior going into his senior year, and then the last one was in high school. No, he was actually in middle school, getting ready to go to high school. And so here I am, full time teaching, full time student, right? So I remember that, and I was so proud of myself because I went through with something. If you're trying to do something and you're doubting yourself, one of the reasons, the year before I was going to do it, and then I said, you know what, I'm not going to apply. They only accept 4 people. Why would they accept me? I'm older. There's going to be all these young, I gave myself every reason not to do it, right? And isn't that what we do? Psych ourselves out. And I totally didn't apply. So the next year I said, you know what? I turned down the volume on that other voice of doubt, and then just did it. And so here we are. I was like, yeah, I was proud of myself for taking that leap. And then next thing you know, September comes around, and I'm on campus the first day, and I said, what did you just do? Like, do you know where your next paycheck is coming from? Like, again, all of this in my ear, in my ear, in my ear. Then the other side said, listen, you asked for this. You were very specific. It's on your vision board, what you asked for. Shut up and do the work. And from that point, I shut up and I started doing the work. And then time passed, and it was time for my first year show. And I said to myself, oh my God, I made it this far. This is great. I'm not hungry. My kids are fine. We're doing good. Somehow things started working out. Sometimes you can't explain this stuff, and I never wanted or needed for anything. But then here I am with doubt again. We're ending up towards the end of the semester, and time for summer, and I'm like, oh my goodness, am I going to have to get a summer job? This is crazy. And I'm looking at my other part, said, what did I tell you? Aren't you supposed to have faith? Are you crazy? Right? Are you going to go work 10 hours somewhere to go pay what, when you're supposed to be in your studio working? You are an artist and you get big checks. Shut your mouth and get to work. Right after my first year show, I sold my first piece from that point on. And from that point, it just kept, I get a call from this person who wants to license this, and the work just started coming in. And that's all she wrote. Then this grant and this fellowship. And then it made sense. I was like, stop it. The work has to get done. When you have a vision, you must do the work. You must do the work and understand that today I'm devoted to nurturing the seeds of God's essence in me. It's in us. And we just have to do the work, take the steps, and look at, here I am, graduated in 2018. This is 2021. I'm doing all the things that I asked for, and there's so much more to go, and I'm still dreaming. And so, yeah, so that's my story. I just wanted to share a little bit with you about the journey and like what it means to just have faith in yourself. And to sometimes we are the biggest ones keeping ourselves back, right? Because we have all the reasons in the world. And I'll tell you this, when I was teaching, there were several teaching in the public schools, there were several times when I would talk to some of my peers and they say, you know what, I think I might leave. And sometimes the people around you are not your biggest supporters. They love you, but their fear, they'll place it on you. So I remember one of my really good friends, she said, well, how would she had 10 million questions about how was I going to do this? You mean you're going to leave your pension? You mean this? You mean that? All of these things to put fear about taking that leap. But sometimes you just have to take the leap and know that you will land on your 2 feet. And that's it. Okay. So that's my talk. So please let me know if you have any questions, any thoughts. This is such a weird way. I just feel like I'm talking to a
You have
screen.
2 questions, Delphine. I'm like, you had
Okay.
2 questions. Actually, well, 2 people mentioned the book and you said that it was sold out. So you're going to do like a reissue or anything of the book?
Well, that's what we're working through now. It's like we're so overloaded with so much work, and we're thinking about what the next book would look like. But it's something that's in the works to put another edition out.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then Equal is on here. She said, do you think traditional publishers will reprint it for you now that there's demand?
These people are so silly. Okay, so we did go to a traditional publisher and they were like, oh, so excited. Then they go, oh, well, you got so much press on the first one that we don't know if we'll be able to finish selling the next one. When I tell you that every single day, I'm not kidding, every single day till now, just if I check the MFON email, someone is asking about that book. And so, sometimes me and Layla, we're like, I just don't get it. You know what I mean? And I mean, we went to one person just to be fair, but so we're going to put ourselves in the mindset and then just kind of say, this is what book number 2 is going to be and then get it out. I feel that with book number 2, a general publisher will publish it if they have any sense at all, because really it's a lot of work to publish on your own. And we really, I don't even know if we have, both of our careers are so like this that I really don't even know if we have that time to do it that way anymore. So it will get published by a bigger publisher when we decide to do the next one. Yeah, but just to know there's still pushback because these people are crazy.
So let me ask you, because the session is about
Uh-huh.
tapping into your creativity and goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, like, I know you, like, we're like, just go out on a leap of faith and just know that it's going to happen, which is what,
Yeah.
many people do because you have to do it. But maybe you could also talk about like some concrete things or steps that you took, because it is a big leap,
Mm-hmm.
and people just can't be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna leave my job tomorrow. There has to be some sort of like, okay, this is a goal. These are some steps I'm going to take in order to get there.
Uh-huh.
So like, maybe you can kind of talk about that. Like, what were some like steps you were
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I'm going to do this, but I need to do these things
Mm-hmm.
first.
Okay, so in terms of just leaving the job, right? Like, so I'm really good with saving. So I'm one of those people from since I was 5 and my mother would give me allowance, I would literally save my money under the carpet and have it hidden somewhere. So I saved. So I felt comfortable enough to say I'm going to leave my job because I had savings. So what I would do is definitely, before you do anything wild and crazy like that, unless you got some real hardcore
Or a trust fund, because like
exactly, just to make sure that you do have some sort of savings, and then also just in case. So for me, if everything flopped, I knew I could just go back and teach if I had to, right? So I guess you could have a backup plan, but in my mind, because I remember this guy said this to me and I just wanted to punch him. He was like, oh, you'll be back. I was like, oh no, I won't. Can you imagine? But if all had failed, right? I could always say, okay, I'm gonna go to my backup plan. Okay, I'm gonna go back to disappointingly. All right, you know what I mean. So I think having a backup plan, just something in your back pocket for security, especially doing something big like this, knowing that you have choices. That's something I say to my kids all the time, is that you
Ooh,
want
there goes a
to
kid.
position yourself. I know one of them is in the reflection over here. Is to make sure that you have a backup, like you have options. How do I give myself options, right? If this doesn't happen, then I'm going to do it this way and this way, because I feel like what we want is here, and 9 out of 10 of the times the path to here is not there. You got to go under the bridge, you got to climb the bridge, you got to slide down the bridge, and then you get there, right? So I think thinking about those ways too, planning wisely, those are things that I did, and really researching to see what the possibilities are, like when you in where it is that you want to go. What are the possibilities of what could possibly happen after I get out of this MFA program with my old behind, right? What are things I could do? I had like 4 different grants that I could apply for. I always have these things. Like, if this doesn't happen, then I know I'm gonna apply for this. Out of 5 of them, I'm gonna get one of them. So it's kind of making that plan in terms of just giving yourself options.
Maybe also talk about, because when you goal set, and because I know you personally, like the goals that you set, things don't always happen how you've envisioned it and what that goal is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about like the flexibility, because you've had other books you've wanted to
Yes.
put out, and then you did MFON before you did
Yes.
the other book. So talk about being flexible with your
Exactly.
goals.
You have to be flexible, and I'm glad you said that, because this project that I've been working on for the past 20 years that's not published yet, like I said, it evolved. It didn't mean I know that thing is going to live somewhere somehow, right? But what happens is that you have to be flexible, and especially as a creative, I will say this, like, I create intuitively. And I'll tell you this, before doing the MFA, it gave me time to have a studio and to reflect in my studio and really understand how I work. And how I was working before that was, I'm going to do this summer, and then I'm going to do that. It was so calculated because I had to, because I had this little space to make work. Now I'm like, no, you don't have to do that to yourself. You have time, like, you see what it is, do the things that you feel like doing intuitively. Now go back and look at what you made, and now let the project tell you what it is. So that, in that way, is way more rewarding. I really can't wait to go and look and see even that long-term project, between going, my hip-hop stuff from the 90s to the work that I did over the, for 10 years in Africa. Now I'm realizing the work is telling me, the thing I have to push myself, my goal now is to write this summer, is that there's a story inside of me. There's a story that needs to come out, and it's very much related to those photos, and it's not as literal as I thought it was. It's definitely abstract, and it's definitely more creative, and it's definitely going to be its own art project in itself. So now I know, when I could discipline myself to sit down and listen, then it will come to me. And so you have to be able to even understand that you don't have so much control over some of the ideas that you have. Sometimes it's something way bigger than you imagine. I was having a conversation with one of my friends yesterday, actually from Nigeria. We always have these, heart to hearts. And one of the things that he said, he was like, your spirit is doing all the work. Your mind is what always gets in the way, right? And sometimes you just have to listen to your spirit. Like, just tell your mind to tone it down. It was my mind who was saying, "Oh, you need to get a summer job." Like, what? How are you gonna do this? Right? Be quiet, listen, and see where it takes you, because there are bigger things waiting all the time.
How do you manage having multiple goals and multiple things that you want to do that feel so very important? Do you pick one? Do you work on
Uh huh.
multiple ones? I know you do, but what do you like? What do you like? What do you like from your experience in having to say, I do have multiple projects and multiple goals, and I'm going to work on them? What would you tell
Mm-hmm.
other people who are like, well, I have lots of things I want to do. Like, how do I figure out?
Mm-hmm. See, what's happening more and more is that the multiple projects are interrelated. So I feel like I'm not going all the way this way. Oops, I'm not going all the way this way. And you know what I mean? So I feel like there is some kind of intertwining with them. And I'm good at I feel like I have to be working on like at least two things at the same time.
Mhm.
You know, and it depends on your personality. Some people could only work on one thing, so you have to really think about what your work ethic it is, because I do like to complete things that I'm working on. When I say that, I don't want to have somebody relying on me and then I can't do something. And even for myself, sometimes you hit a wall with something and it needs to take a break and then you have to come back to it. So I think it's listening to how you move and how you work, and then also seeing what that project is telling you. Sometimes a project is like, could you leave me alone so I could get a break and come back to me a year later? And then you'll be surprised how like a new fresh set of eyes, it becomes something else.
Okay, so what about like inspiration? Because I think for some people, they don't quite know what their goals are. They feel like maybe they lack inspiration or the things around them that help direct them. Because like inspiration and things around you sometimes help you fine tune the things that you want to self-actualize. So like, how do you find inspiration, and what can you tell other people who are like, I don't feel inspired?
I find inspiration by reading about like I always like to see how someone else did something, right? So I kind of, if there's someone who's doing something I'm doing, like I love Carrie Mae Weems' work. So sometimes I just go in and look at her website and just look at the whole thing from the beginning to the end, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so amazing. And not that I want to do what she's doing, how she does it, but it inspires me to know that you could do anything. Like you literally could do anything. You know what I mean? So that's one thing. But then also I'm inspired by music. So sometimes I go in a deep dive. Like before we went to Nigeria, um maybe a whole 3 years before that, every single day I was listening. Every single entire day I was listening to
And on the trip too.
Yes, every day you
listen to
every day. And what it was doing to me, it was giving me a history lesson. And I kept imagining, because I'm listening to these and I was getting a history lesson, and it was just inspiring me to do something creatively that meant something in the world. Like how, like, because I feel like he's a conceptual artist. You know what I mean? Like, and even everything late, like I was really taking apart his mastery of the art form of music and storytelling and something that could make you move your body, right? How do you do all of those things at the same time? And that was my study. So even the study doesn't necessarily have to be in your field, because I'm, don't put a microphone in front of my mouth to sing, right? But there's something about someone's consistent, you know, that someone's work ethic that inspires you. You say, this man, like, imagine like everything, every beat has to be on tune and da 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 da, and that inspires me. Also, I'm inspired by reading historical fiction. I'm really interested in history, and I just love reading historical fiction and how that's another way to get you to kind of research deeper into our past. So that inspires me as well. So what I think is that sometimes people wonder, how do I get ideas? Like, how do you get ideas? Come to me, but sometimes the ideas come to me through doing something else. So what I recommend, like in the beginning, when I would say, really do a self-assessment of what do you love to do. Like, what is it that you just love to do? If you could do the same things every day for the rest of your life, what would they be? And how do you now weave that into something that's going to inspire you to do whatever it is that you want to do in your career? How is all of that intertwined? And for me, like even some of my work, work that I'm making now, I find myself working with sound all the time. I'm not making music, but I'm using sound, and it's so satisfying. Like I'm using the same tools that hip hop artists will use, like sampling and all of that stuff, and it's really inspiring to me. And and it's always something new, you know. So I think it's really about a self-assessment. Like what do I love? Like how do I communicate? And that's if you're an artist, like if you're a creative.
So what would you, to end on, if you were to kind of give people like something to walk away with, or like 3 important things, like if you're trying to set goals and kind of make things manifest, these are like 3 things that work for you. And it could be like meditation or talking to friends or whatever, but like what are some things that work for you when you're thinking about setting your goals and like testing things you want to happen?
Number one, I believe in vision boards. Like taking that very seriously. And it doesn't have to be, you know, like some of the vision boards, you got to cut up all of these pages. My vision board that I used before taking my leap, it was a piece of paper, and I just had a bunch of color pencils, and I just wrote out everything. I just kept writing. And what happens when you're doing a vision board and you start writing the things out is, think about the things that you're writing about. Sometimes your mind starts telling you, you sure you want to put that down? Because it's interesting. Like, they're the things that you feel like, can I really do this? I don't want, it's there's this conversation that you have with yourself. And so I say push through that and write those things down that you want to see happen. Really, and look at it every single day. Repeat it in your mind. I'm going to tell you a quick story. So when I was at right before I decided to apply to Columbia, I kid you not, I was at my school, which was in Harlem. The first time ever I saw a Columbia University bus go by. I was like, oh my God. This is when I was deciding whether I should apply. I'm like, you got to apply. I was having a conversation with myself. You better apply this year. And I looked up and a bus went by. And I was like, okay, go put your application in. Right. So I think it's something that I kept thinking about, and writing and looking at it. So definitely vision board.
We had a session on
Secondly,
vision boarding earlier today. So that's so funny you mentioned it, because we had a session on vision boarding.
yes, vision boards are real. Yeah. And then two is to have a circle of trustworthy people around you that you could just share with, like just kind of bounce ideas off of. And, you know, it doesn't have to be 10 people. It could be one person. It could be two people like you. Like you know, all my dreams. And so, and then also, three is to take the baby steps necessary in order to get to where you need to go. It's never like, I'm going to just do this, boom. What work do you have to do? You have to do the work. You have to do the work. Like, I could sit here all day and say, like back then, I could have been like, I want to be a photographer. I want to be a photographer. What are the things that could stop you from being a photographer? Oh, I need a camera. Now you have absolutely no excuse. This could be if you want to be a photographer, you have this, you could start. So get out of your own way and do the work, because I feel like one of the biggest things we do is get in our own way, and we will come up with every excuse under the sun of why we can't do something. Instead of thinking about what you can't do, remove that. When you're talking about yourself, think about what you can do. I can do this. Have the I can in your conversation. I would completely take I can't out of the conversation. And then also, do not, I know this just from experience. As an artist, you're constantly applying for grants and all types of things and going to people, and you get a lot of rejection. Welcome rejection. Use rejection as a stamp, as an honor badge, as a stripe on your sleeves, because all it does, let it inspire you to go ahead and do more and to continue to push.
That's so good. Like, so many things you said. Just yesterday, somebody was like, rejection, you need that. Like, it's resilient. It builds resilience.
You need it.
Somebody mentioned in the session yesterday. So thank you so much for Delphine. Because this woman is busy. But forever, I'm like, come to a session. She's busy, but she's doing so many amazing projects. So I guess we'll close. What do you have coming up? Like, you're always exhibiting and doing talks. Do you have anything coming up that we should know about?
Yeah, I have a show. I'm really excited about a show that I'm doing next in June at the Penumbra Foundation, and it's going to be like I said before. I'm been in conversation with my grandmother's spirit. She used to make gara, and a lot of my practice is inspired by her fabric making. So, well, her dyeing and techniques. So I started using the photographic process to use some of her patterns and make my own patterns and overlay them. So I'm a whole exhibit where I'm using photography and printmaking and fabrics and some sewing and film and all kind of things, and it's called For Adama, for Grandma Adama. And, you know, so that's really special to me, and that's going to launch in June. And then I'm doing some other things too. Oh, I'm NFTs. I'm doing an NFT residency. So in August, I'll be launching my first virtual NFT exhibit. So I've been making some work for that. And then with fun, we have some archive, like we're doing works around the archive and pushing. What we really want to do is to start publishing books for artists. So that's on the way. Yeah, so we're doing a lot of stuff. There's a lot of, I always get stumped when people are saying, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Wait, what deadline do I have coming up this week?" Yeah, so there's a
I
bunch
think
of
like
things.
it's like one.
Oh,
Oh,
the film, Netflix. Yes, if you have Netflix on May 6th,
Our
they changed the
Mother's
name. It's from
Gardens.
Our Mother's Garden. So I'll be in that film with my mom, really talking about being raised, by my mom from Sierra Leone, my African mama in Brooklyn, and we're sharing stories. It's really about legacy and celebration of motherhood, the trials and the tribulations, and the joy of what happens between that connection between the mother and daughter. So that's going to air on Netflix on May 6th. So that's really exciting.
So thank you again. Thank you everybody who joined. I think this was such a great conversation, and